All right, welcome to the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast. Today I'm joined by Janet Cohn, Athletic Director at UNC Asheville. Janet, thanks for being on the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk to you and try to answer your questions and maybe share a few things about our university and our athletics department.
Yeah, I had told you in my initial email that I stopped by as one of the stops on my hashtag HEA road trip, and I felt like I saw half the system schools in the University of North Carolina system, but I just really enjoyed the campus. It's one of those I know it's one of the smaller campuses in the system, and I've worked several years at a smaller institution, so it was exciting, and I was almost out of gas when I got to Asheville, so I was driving around campus, and then I realized I should probably find a gas station, then come back and circle through. So I was curious if you could just start with maybe profiling your institution a bit for people that don't know it, as far as athletic conference, number of sports, size and type of the institution, and then maybe just the physical presence of where you all are located.
Absolutely. And you already mentioned one aspect of what we are. We're the University of North Carolina, Asheville. So we're part of the state of North Carolina public system. What's a little bit different for us than maybe our sister schools like Chapel Hill or NC State or Greensboro or Charlotte, we're the designated liberal arts university. So based on that, we are going to be a university of 3,800 to 4,000 students and no more. So we are not looking to grow large like some of our sister institutions. So we love that. We also have had Division I athletics for a long time, but we like the combination of the small college feel, but the Division I athletics. So we have 16 sports. 14 of those were here when I arrived, about 17 years ago. And during that period, we added actually women's swimming and diving and women's golf to get to 16 sports. We're in the Big South Conference, which are schools, we love our footprint as Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina for our conference. And actually, as of July 1st, North Carolina A&T, which is another sister school, will be joining the Big South Conference. So we got a few schools up in Virginia, a core group here in the state of North Carolina, and then a few schools down in South Carolina. So it's really great for our competition.
Yeah, I was going to say that helps, I'm sure, with the budget, as we'll talk about a little bit about the footprint of your conference. And the liberal arts, I like that the motto of the campus I read was "I lift my eyes to the mountains," and it's just a beautiful area. A lot of winding roads in the campus. I felt like I got lost a couple times, but I was able to get a selfie with the bulldog statue.
That's a historic statue, part of our tradition. And thank goodness we'll be actually able to do it this year, is when freshmen come on campus for the initial welcome convocation, they line up and they touch Rocky, the bulldog statue's head. And then the graduating class in May, once again, they line up in cap and gown and sort of touch Rocky for good luck on their way into the real world. So it's really, beautiful. And you mentioned like lift up your eyes. If you're sitting in the quad, which is the center heart of our campus, you can look and see Mount Pisgah. And you really truly have to lift your eyes and look towards the sky to see that mountain that's, within sight. So it's a beautiful campus. The part that we are located in Asheville, North Carolina is certainly helpful. We're one of the most popular places, not only to visit for vacation reasons, but obviously right now we're one of the most popular places in the country where people are moving. We've seen such a growth spurt here in our community and actually this region. And that's one of the things we love. And maybe later on, I'll share a little more, because we have this really melting pot of people from all over the world coming here. We have a program in our athletic department called Leaders for Leaders. It's a mentoring program. And because, we have so many leaders that have moved here, we partner our student athletes with a Leader for Leader. So we love our community. Asheville is a real plus for us. And we're the only Division I school in our city. So that's another plus for us.
Yeah, it's really a vibrant city as well for the institution to be a part of, and getting that luxury of being the smaller liberal arts school, but also being in a in a great city. It reminds me of my time at University of Indianapolis that we were talking about, being the big city Indianapolis, but a small school. And it was a beautiful city. I just wish I would have been able to get there with less pressure of running out of gas. And then it was timing of FaceTiming my two boys before bed. And then also the sun getting behind the mountain. But I still was fortunate to see the school before it got dark. And I was really excited to add it to the list of one of the schools I stopped at. And I want to shift to a strategic planning. It's something that I like to look at strategic plans, and especially when they're specific. And in 2018, you all announced a 5-year strategic plan, Believe, Achieve, Thrive. In your goals for athletic competitiveness, which was an area you had written a metric to capitalize on basketball success by increasing attendance each year by 5%. And then another metric for the athletic competitiveness was to see an approved, updated athletic section in the university campus master plan. So that leads me to ask, how was the progress on meeting those metrics prior to the pandemic? And if the progress was stalled due to COVID protocols, I'm assuming you weren't able to have fans. And if so, how can you regain that momentum to not only grow the ticket sales again, but also to make sure that the campus plan evolves with the athletic footprint still?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because many businesses, universities, athletic departments have strategic plans, but many times they stay on a shelf and you really wonder how much has gotten done. We actually use ours daily. It guides us in what decisions we make, how we're going to invest our resources. So, strategic planning is very important. I'll start with the second part, or the middle part of that question. How did we do with our master facility plan? Well, even before COVID started, the university was in the midst of doing an updated strategic plan, facility plan for the university, with a component being athletics. Athletics actually got our part finished first. So we have a new athletic facility master plan, and the university finished theirs just before we got into COVID. So now part of that facility plan will become part of our capital campaign that we'll launch this coming 21-22 academic year. So it's very important. And we feel like we've done some work on our facilities here, and now it's time to refresh some of them. Our track is one of our most used facilities, not only by our 80-some student athletes and our students and our campus folks, but our community members use it a lot. So that track is something that's in that new master facility plan, how we can upgrade it and make it even better. Let's go back to this question about attendance, because we've been very good at men's and women's basketball. We've had great coaches. Our fans show up. We always want to have more fans. And we know we're also in competition now for a lot of different things. Asheville's a city, it's the music scene, it's the beer scene, all the breweries, it's lots, camping, hiking, there's lots of things to do. So we felt it was important to have a plan and then work that plan. And we were seeing some increase on both men and women's side. And then we hit COVID. And so COVID, no fans. So obviously that year will have this kind of strange mark by it. But what we did see was an increase in our ESPN Plus, where people went, to watch us play, and for all of our sports. So, they may not have been here in the facilities or on campus, but the parents, the Bulldog fans, the recruits, they were watching us through ESPN Plus. So during this COVID, I'm going to go back to that March when everything got shut down. We had certain goals. We have our strategic plan, but we saw what was coming was going to be unique. And how could we implement our strategic plan in what we felt like were going to be day-to-day decisions? We didn't know if we were going to come back to campus, then are you going to have practices? So we set some what I call interim goals, and I'll tell you what those were for our athletic department. Number one, we wanted to make sure that we were generating enough revenue, raising enough money to honor every scholarship commitment we had for that following year, which we were able to do. And actually, we just had a record-breaking fundraising year for athletics. Our donors were very generous. Number two, one of the goals was, as I met by Zoom with all our coaches and staff that we would not furlough nor fire any people that were working for us. And we were able to achieve that goal, even through tough times, and I'm really thankful that we were able to keep everybody employed with us. The third goal was we would not drop any sports, because that was immediately what we saw. People were realizing there's going to be less revenue, and all across the country, people were looking at maybe you have too many sports. What can you do? So we didn't drop any sports, which is really good. And the fourth goal was, to get our student athletes back on campus, back at practice. And if our Big South colleagues, if we're going to have competitions and championships, that we would be able to be ready to do that. So we were able to accomplish all four of those goals. So that was my conversation with our staff. And then we went one step further. I said, that's the basic goals for the 2021, how we're going to get through this year. I said, but the real goal is, how are we going to come out of COVID better? And we're going to be, even though we have to deal with COVID and the protocols every day, we're going to also be working on how do we come out better. So during this time, we were working on behind the scenes new marketing plans, looking at everything. How could we do things differently? And actually this afternoon, that group is meeting again, because we've got some new things planned that we believe are really going to encourage people to come back to campus. And some people are anxious to come back, but we also know during COVID, people learn different new habits. So, how can you make this more entertaining? So we've chosen 3 target groups that we're working on. One is going to be our own students, because remember, we'll have a group of freshmen who spent their high school year kind of uneasy, so they've never experienced college. We have a group of sophomores that did not have the normal college experience. And then, of course, our returners, but we're creating a different way of really working with our student and our student spirit group, and actually been meeting with some of the leaders over the summer. The second target we're going to focus on to grow our attendance is families with children. What we have found out, the families have learned during COVID, now that they can get out, they want to find safe, family-friendly, affordable things that they can do with their children. And we feel like Bulldog Sports is that kind of event where it's a great place. Now we're going to add some stuff with some, family fun zones, things for them to do, open a little earlier, some of those. And then our bread and butter at our university for athletics is what we call the 55 plus group, because we have so many retirees here in town. They've carried us through the years. They come. Well, we don't want to just take them for granted. So we're going to create some new events, some new opportunities for them to not only come watch basketball, but socialize with others, meet new people in the community. So hopefully we're going to be able to not only come back where we were, but actually create some increase this year.
Yeah, it'll be converting those people from ESPN streaming to in person. I mean, that was probably a huge advantage to be able to still let them see you. But I do imagine it's now you got to, okay, we want you to watch online, but we really want you to come in person. And so the fact that you're targeting individual and families and seniors is a great idea.
Well, and, I think pre-COVID too, many state of North Carolina had passed the law that you could now sell alcohol at athletic competitions. And we had pilot tested it a little bit, but we think coming out of COVID, that social aspect, the food, the whatever, ice cream, those kinds of things, people want that tied into the sporting event. They want a little other kind of entertainment, but it is a high need. I think we saw it a little bit before COVID, and then it was confirmed. People want social experiences with their friends, with their family members. They want to be able to do something together. And so, we're really going to target on that with some of the things that we're going to do at our soccer matches, our volleyball, our basketball, baseball games.
Well, the arena was an eye catcher when I drove by. It's a beautiful facility, and there was people on the track actually when I pulled up next to us. I didn't want to bother anyone doing their exercise, but it's just all in a good position on campus. That I'm sure once this facility master plan gets going, that it's just going to build on that excitement.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the Sherrill Center, Kimmel Arena. Believe it or not, it will be 10 years old this fall. And so we're planning a special celebration called Celebration on the Court that we're going to kick off basketball season, but also Wilma Sherrill, whose name is on the building, still a longtime Bulldog fan, and Joe Kimmel, the Kimmel Arena. His family is very involved here at the university. So we're going to kick off a great bring back everybody, but with a really nice celebration on the basketball court with some of our Bulldog friends.
It definitely didn't look 10 years old. You all have been taking good care of it. I didn't walk around inside, but I looked at pictures online, and I really wanted to remember the name, but when you stop at 17 schools in 4 days, it's hard to remember the arena names.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing the name. And I kind of want to talk about, so go from strategic planning to the actual budget. So I'm sure I've worked at schools that have been similar size, and I know that you had to be on a modest budget, which I'm sure you all are on. How have you been able to maintain operating a D1 athletic department with a smaller budget? And then how do you make it clear when bringing in a coach or keeping a coach happy that the budget is the budget? And that's the situation.
Okay, so two-part question. I can start with the second part first about explaining our resources to someone that we're asking to come work for us. And I think the thing that we all have to remember is that are recruiting tools for us when we're trying to get employees is there's only X amount of Division I head coaching jobs, and we happen to be one of them. So, that's a recruiting. And living in Asheville, North Carolina is a great recruiting tool. The other thing that's a recruiting tool before we get to the resources is, we have a tradition of, whether it's basketball, women's soccer, of being able to compete and win Big South Championship. So, we have a little bit of a track record going. When we have the conversation about resources, it really goes back to the culture we've developed in our athletic department. And we really hire to that culture. What do we really believe in? And one of the things we believe in, that we're going to be good stewards of the athletic resources that we have. And we're also, besides being hardworking, we're going to be innovative and creative. Because that is the way we have learned how to add to our overall resources when there's not necessarily true cash money. And so, we get coaches and staff members who buy into that is not, as I've told them before, and I'm a former coach, I've said this over and over. I know coaches and universities that have millions of dollars more than we do and still can't win a championship. Money does not equal winning. It's the culture of what you put in place with your student athletes, coaches, staff, and your university. Now, money helps, obviously, because you want to have scholarship money for sure, and nice facilities as much as you can, but you cannot get caught up in the arms race. You got to be what you really are. And we try to make sure that when we're recruiting staff members or student athletes, it's about the experience that we're going to provide in an environment where you really want to compete or work or play. So that's part of that philosophy. The question about budget, I want to, and for our folks that are listening to you, watching, in the state of North Carolina, every state systems have different kind of guidelines when it comes to funding. And in North Carolina, state schools get no state funding. So it is very important. Now, we can charge athletic fees, which every state school does. That's one source of revenue. But, really our revenue is generated from various categories of what we're doing. And a lot of it is philanthropy, fundraising, corporate sponsorships, ticket sales. So we're really mindful of every year trying to increase those resources, but realizing that every year you're not going to bring on another extra $10 million. It's a slow, steady growth. And that's what we've done since I got here. And we stay in the black, by the way, which is pretty amazing. We have not been in the red at all since I've been here.
Yeah, and I've had a couple of fellow UNC System athletic directors on, Mike Hill from Charlotte and Bubba Cunningham at Chapel Hill. And so systems have a lot to offer higher education, but I'm always kind of trying to figure out in my doctoral program and just working in athletics, if it really changes much with athletic departments since the NCAA treats individual institutions so differently, on whether it is a benefit to an athletic department to be part of a university system. Would you agree with that, that there are benefits, or is it sometimes a drawback? But you're also a very different institution type inside the system, and I'm wondering if that plays into it at all.
Well, actually, since I've been here for a while now, I actually think it's a benefit. And I'll give you an example. All the ADs in the system, we're all going to be on a Zoom tomorrow because we share things. Like with COVID, we were meeting, I don't know, once a month, once a week, because the system are going to give us the guidelines to run our universities. So if the athletic directors can get together and, I know Bubba and everybody, Kim Rickard, we're all sharing similar. What are you going to do with this? How are you going to bring your student athletes back? So even though we had the NCAA guidelines and the conference guidelines in your university, it was a huge benefit to share some best practices. What are you learning? What are you hearing? What worked? What didn't work? So I think in a lot of ways it is a benefit. I know some other things that help us when we come together as the system ADs. If there's things that we can put forward that could help all of us, that's a plus. It really is. And, and sometimes we have recommendations and things that we try to share with our chancellors, and our chancellors hopefully share that with our president. And it really is, to me, I think it's helpful.
It's such I've always known of the schools of the UNC, in whatever school. I wasn't aware, I guess, of how big the system is and how so many Division I schools are in the UNC system.
Yeah.
And it is really magnificent of how many there are.
Yeah. Not only in our system, in the state of North Carolina, because we say Chapel Hill, NC State, Greensboro, Wilmington, Western, UNC Asheville. Then you want to go private schools, Elon. Davidson. I mean, you just go down the list. So, we have a lot of Division I programs in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, it's a big reason why I was able to visit so many schools. So I visited Elon. I didn't get to make it to Charlotte. I drove through Charlotte like 1:00 in the morning, so I didn't stop at Davidson or UNC Charlotte. But I am having the athletic director from Davidson on. I stopped at Campbell University. It's such an amazing state. So they both did mention that you all were talking during COVID, and I'm wondering if there's going to be future innovations coming out of COVID, because I think a big popular talking point is what are we going to keep and build on after COVID? And you mentioned it earlier. I could see there's some innovations of how system athletic departments help each other even more, whether it's agreeing to schedule competitions or sharing any type of knowledge or facilities or equipment.
Well, actually, Jimmy Bass, who's at Wilmington, and Kim Rickard and I have had this conversation multiple times. Let's agree to play each other. I mean, because you're in the same state, you're a bus ride away, so, and some of that came out of COVID because you weren't you were trying to avoid long trips, multiple night trips. And so there's some things like that could be really good when it becomes time for safety and health and resources, but it also creates great rivalries. And let's don't forget, since we don't have football, I'll say this, Tobacco Road basketball, the days of Carolina and Duke, it doesn't get any better than that. So why not try to play as many schools in your state, especially a state like Indiana's the same way, it's basketball state. So North Carolina, has so many good Division I programs and a rich tradition of great college basketball and soccer and field hockey and other things. So we try to hopefully we'll play each other a little more.
Well, I want to ask one more financial question, and then we'll start to wrap it up. And this one's a little selfish for me because I'm in charge of our APR and our grad rates and so the academic metrics at my institution. So I noticed another metric on the current strategic plan is to have the APR score department-wide of 985, a graduation success rate of 90, and 13 percentage points higher than the institution's federal grad rate. In my day job, I know that these metrics also line up with the academic revenue distribution. Those are the exact same criteria for those listening. You had to hit at least one of those to get a piece of the pie. So with that distribution dollar amount growing over time, is that why you all decided to be very specific in putting it in your strategic plan? Because I imagine there's plenty of things you could do with that money as it gets into $500,000.
And actually, it didn't. The money part came into this. Obviously, it's an incentive. In one of our first and our second strategic plans, we had a huge focus on what can we do to help with student athlete success. We hired Rebecca Nelms to be our first full-time director of student athlete success. How are we going to improve academically? And you mentioned hiring coaches. As we've hired coaches, that's been a real theme. Our culture is the best championship we'll ever win is when they walk across the stage with a diploma. So way in advance of this, we were already working towards those things. And there were serious conversations as part of our other strategic plans. It just happened when the NCAA passed. Now we're going to actually give you an incentive for doing good academically. We were already well positioned to be in line to be, to receive some of that money. And along with several other of our Big South schools are doing really great in those areas. And anytime we're giving our annual report or talking to our board of trustees or community group, some of our highlights are going to be our student athletes have a 3.2 something grade point average overall. Our highlights are going to be our graduation rates that are really, really high. Our highlights are how many student athletes graduated this year. So, that's been part of our culture, even before we started on how can we be, better athletically. The first goal was let's get better academically, because UNC Asheville is a liberal arts and science university. It is very tough. Its academic standards are a lot like a private school. So, we've got to make sure that we're recruiting a student athlete who can be successful here. And that starts with hiring coaches who really get the fact that you got to get scholar athletes if you're going to be successful here and win that championship about graduating.
Yeah, my concern is the if the revenue distribution is going to be able to get through COVID after losing. The NCAA lost so much money from the college basketball tournament, but that revenue for the schools that have put in so much attention on their academics, you're right. If you've been putting the attention on, you're probably going to hit one of those 3 requirements either. I don't really like the one requirement about being 13 percentage points higher than your student body, because it's like you're the same team. So when I was at Indiana State, I used to always, and I first got to know these metrics, I was kind of like, why are we doing that again? But I can kind of see why for those other schools. But I do have a concern that money is going to dry up before it really gets going because of COVID. So I'm hoping that everyone does, because that's, for those that aren't aware, you're talking about eventually $500,000 a year just from, having strong academics if the revenue distribution stays.
Yeah. And I think right now it sounds like that money's coming, that we'll go ahead and get distributions this year. I think we're at this inflection point. It's going to be a day-to-day what is happening right now with intercollegiate athletics, as you know, with name, image, and likeness and the Austin case. And so it's hard to even look ahead to say whether or not that will, keep coming or not. I think we're just right now dealing with some of the things that, July 1st is an important date because we have 7 states that are going to have laws about name, image, and likeness. And so hopefully it will continue, because once again, if we keep calling what our mission is on a university campus is education, and we certainly believe that our student athletes should, work towards getting a degree and ultimately graduate. And we hope most of them graduate from UNC Asheville, because our other hot topic, as you know, is transfer. So you got to kind of tweak that goal about how many actually graduate, because some of it's going to be out of your control. You just hope that you've prepared them. One, that we hope they graduate from UNC Asheville and they want to be all in for UNC Asheville. But if for some reason they choose or there's some situation where they do transfer, ultimately, we still hope they graduate from college. I mean, that's why we got into college athletics. And we've seen so many success stories where getting that diploma, getting that education have changed lives. And sometimes I think we forget about that part.
Yeah. The other part of my job is transfer evals. So I've been very busy. Everyone's focused on NIL. I'm just focused on transfer evaluations. I do have a concern about transfer evals that I hope institutions are in their academic services and their compliance staff are being upfront to their student athletes that are transferring in or out. Is transfer compatibility of credits has been very under discussed. People are not talking about that enough. The eligibility rules have not changed as far as you got to be at 40%, 60%, 80%. And when you have a junior transfer and they have to be at 60 or 80% at another school that is very unlike the one they attended, you're probably going to have very few major options because of the way your credits transfer. And so I would think that UNC Asheville is in a good spot for this, because if you're attending there, you already probably want to be at the liberal arts level. And it's just such a working and interviewing also athletic directors at schools your size. I had Dr. Nikki Moore from Colgate on, for example, and it's just such a unique experience at a campus like that I think it'd be, hopefully they will just stay and graduate and really enjoy that liberal arts. And that leads me to ask about NIL. And I used to not even talk about NIL because I thought I wanted that podcast to be a break from NIL. But now, now I definitely always had to ask one kind of question that I'm curious about. And I'm wondering, is the arms race to providing NIL services at the school level, is it a concern for you for smaller D1 schools because of maybe not being able to partner with these companies that cost a lot of money? Or is it more of an opportunity to do a holistic approach by kind of using that liberal arts mission that we're going to do this in-house and we're going to empower student athletes to make these decisions on their own? What's your kind of department strategy there?
Our strategy is we're going to do both. We have partnered. Actually, we're with Influence, and because they will help. Certainly the one thing about a small school, as you said, I don't have 6 compliance people running around to track a lot of those kinds of things. So, we definitely needed some help, and actually went with them because they work for the university. They're not trying to get money from the student athletes or any of those things. So it's a lot of education, a lot of compliance tracking, and some things that can be helpful. And there's a lot of other good companies out there, I understand, but we're partnering with them, but we're also going to use our own campus resources too, so that we can be mindful of how we're really helping the student athletes get a handle on this. Because I think on July 1st, depending on where you are, you might think you're in a state that already has a law and your state doesn't. So, coming out of this, the next couple of weeks, we're going to do a lot of education, get set up, see how things unfold. We'll learn more. It's a little sort of like COVID. You learn a little more every day. And what you thought was going to be great today, tomorrow you need to adapt and change. So that's going to be our philosophy coming forward. And Aaron Spence, who's my director of compliance, and our legal counsels here on campus, and others, including our chancellor, has been very involved in this. I do think some smaller schools think it's not, well, I'm not going to have any student athletes that are going to really benefit from this. And I try to remind them, our student athletes are very entrepreneur-like, are very creative and innovative. They're going to want to do some things. And I think we might all be surprised with what they come up with, certainly within the guidelines that we've been given at this point in time. So we're getting ready. We have been preparing for this for a while too.
Yeah, influencers. I followed Jim. We followed each other on Twitter for a couple of years now while he's been building this, and he's just they've just taken it to a new level. So influencers, definitely one of the companies to watch, and a lot of schools working with them. The Asheville location is going to be huge for you all too, because you're going to have community businesses or restaurants that might see that as an opportunity. But I think smaller institutions definitely need to also realize it's a good opportunity for you to they're going to be out there with their image, and it's going to still tie back to the athletic department and to attend. And so I'm hoping people embrace it a little bit more. And And I was just thinking back to my other stops because I'm at a Power 5 institution right now, but I've been, at FCS and Division II and grew up sandwiched between two D3 schools. And so I know those communities well, and I do think it's going to be for everyone. The size of the deals are different, but that's not really the point.
Right. And, there'll be some student athletes that take advantage of it, that want to try this. And there'll be some that will kind of say, that's a lot of work. I've got to do these things. Yeah. Because you say you're going to do them, you're going to have to do them. So I think some of that will level off as we go forward. And, it's where we are in the modern era right now with intercollegiate athletics, and we'll adapt, we'll be flexible, we'll learn every day, and hopefully we'll help our student athletes understand, our coaches, staff, and our Bulldog friends too.
Well, Janet, my last question, I appreciate you taking the time, and you've been in college athletics as both an AD and a basketball coach for many years. In a time where several ADs have exited the industry with the pandemic and all the changes coming to intercollegiate athletics and in higher education, it's been that way too for administrators. What keeps you excited about the job despite all the changes? Because it sounds like you've just embraced it. And what would your advice also be to those that may be skeptical about the direction of college athletics within higher education?
Well, you're right. I have been a coach and now an administrator for quite a while. And I really believe that it's back to there is still much value in having athletics as part of a university at any level, D1, 2, or 3, it doesn't matter. There is a lot of value there and a lot of things that I really believe that we need to continue to embrace. We might have to do it differently. But the thing that keeps me going, I get excited every day. When you've been in the business as long as I have, you get to all of a sudden see the next generations of leaders. And I really believe there's somebody out there, or some bodies, a few people who are going to help us figure out how to keep what's really great about college athletics great, and how to deal with the other parts that we're now experiencing, that we still have that value, that we're not professional sports, that, we're part of a higher education, a university. And so I really believe in that. But I have a lot of fun. I'm still a coach. I'm just coaching adults, putting together a game plan as a strategic plan, all those things. And as long as I still wake up every morning and want to come to work and be around student athletes, coaches, and feel like, I can stay on top of what's happening. And I still believe, we have things that we can do. And I get asked occasionally, like, well, didn't this make you want to walk away, with COVID? And now I'm like, no, it just made me a little more determined. I'm a Bulldog at heart, just to say, hey, let's help this next group get ready for what's coming in the future. And so that's why I love it. I love what I do. Even on a bad day, I still love it. So.
Well, Janet Cohn, Athletic Director, University of North Carolina, Asheville. Thanks for being on the Higher Ed Athletics podcast.
Well, thank you so much.